I was that doctor everyone at the hospital knew as the tough one. Dr. Anna Clara, chief surgeon, neurosurgery specialist, always with a spotless lab coat and a sharp answer ready to fire back. I grew up in a family where science was the religion, and God, oh, to me, that was just talk for weak people who needed emotional crutches. I used to mock it, really, when a patient came into pre-op talking about prayers or asking to pray before anesthesia. I'd say, look, what's going to save you here is the scalpel, not some invisible being up there. And I'd laugh, thinking I was being rational, modern, superior. My life revolved around endless shifts, medical journal publications, and awards that fed my ego. But deep down, there was a terrible emptiness, a loneliness I disguised with caffeine and sleepless nights studying complex cases. I remember as if it were yesterday a heated argument with a devout nurse. She insisted that faith helped with recovery, and I, in my teacherly tone, snapped back, "Faith? That's a placebo at best. I save lives with evidence, not illusions." At that moment, I felt invincible, as if the universe were only matter and energy, with no room for anything beyond what I could dissect on the operating table. Changing my life? That never even crossed my mind. I was a proud atheist, confident in my disbelief, and saw believers as poor deluded souls. But look at that. God's presence was already there, hovering, waiting for the right moment to slap me in the face, or better yet, to give me a deliverance I didn't even know I needed. Day after day, I dove into my work like it was my only purpose. I woke up at 5 a.m., rushed to the hospital, operated on delicate brains where a millimeter off could end everything. And I nailed it every time. Patients left the ICU thanking me as if I were a goddess, and I loved it. But at night, alone in my fancy apartment overlooking the glowing city, I felt a hole in my chest. I tried to fill it with expensive wine, fleeting affairs, or binge-watching medical dramas. It's normal, I told myself. A high-performance life is like this. Little did I know that Jesus was about to burst into that bubble of arrogance, showing me that my so-called rationality was just a thin shell protecting a wounded heart. Once I treated an elderly man with an inoperable tumor, or at least that's what the test said. His family begged for a miracle, praying in the hallway. I went into the room and said firmly, "Look, science doesn't lie. Prepare for the worst." He died a few days later, and I thought, one more proof that God doesn't exist. But something stirred inside me. A twinge of doubt I shoved deep down. I needed transformation, but denied it. My faith? Zero. I only believed in what I could see, touch, and prove. And that's how I went on, blind to the presence of God, who was already whispering in the silence of my sleepless nights. And then came that routine surgery that changed everything. I was in the OR, the whole team in sync, the patient on the table with an aneurysm demanding precision. I felt completely in control, as always. But suddenly, a searing pain in my head, blurred vision. I thought, it's just stress. It wasn't. The world spun, and I fell, feeling the cold floor beneath me. In that instant, before blacking out, an inner voice screamed for help, not from science, but from something greater. Deliverance had begun, and the miracle that followed would make me question every mockery I'd ever made in my life. I was there, standing with the scalpel in my hand, the bright surgical lights reflecting off my visor. The patient, a 38-year-old man with a middle cerebral artery aneurysm, was breathing calmly under anesthesia. I was giving orders: microforceps, constant suction, monitor the pressure. Everything under control, like hundreds of surgeries before. Suddenly, a sharp stab in the back of my neck, like a hot needle piercing straight into my brain. Just a migraine, I thought, biting my lip. But the pain grew, thundered inside my head. and my vision began to flicker like a TV with static. I tried to say, "Continue without me," but my voice came out hoarse, slurred. My legs gave out, the scalpel clattered to the floor, and I collapsed face first onto the cold linoleum. The team panicked. I could hear them, even though my body felt heavy. "Dr. Ana Clara, code blue." Someone shouted my name as they rolled me onto my back, opened my coat, and started compressions. I, who always saved others, was now the lifeless body on the table. I remember the smell of alcohol, the beeping monitor racing, the lights spinning on the ceiling as they rushed me to the emergency CT, massive hemorrhagic stroke. They diagnosed within minutes. My pupils were unresponsive, intracranial pressure through the roof. "She's going," I heard a resident whisper. Clinically, I was dead. Heart stopped for 4 minutes and 20 seconds, long enough for any neurosurgeon to know the brain turns to mush. But that's exactly when deliverance began to take shape. Floating. That's the only word that fits. I no longer felt the weight of my body or the pain, just dense darkness, as if I'd been sucked into a tunnel without end. I tried to scream, but there was no mouth, no air. I thought, is this it? Over? All my knowledge, awards, sleepless nights, for nothing. A cold terror took hold. I, who denied the soul, now felt something breaking free, as if the me was bigger than the body on the gurney. And then, from the depths of that darkness, a light appeared, not blinding, but warm, welcoming, like the sun rising on a winter morning. It moved closer, and with it came a peace I had never experienced, not in any conference, not in any applause. Inside that light, a presence, not a shadow, not a distorted voice, someone, solid, real, more real than anything I had ever touched with surgical gloves. He didn't need to introduce himself. Deep down in the soul I had sworn didn't exist, I knew it was Jesus. And he spoke, not with words, but straight into my heart. "You have healed bodies, Ana Clara, but I want to heal your soul." Right then, a whole movie played in my mind. Every mockery, every patient I ridiculed, every night I slept without gratitude. I cried, not with physical tears, but I cried. I asked for forgiveness right there, in that in-between place, promising that if I came back, everything would be different. The transformation began in that instant, even before I opened my eyes again. Suddenly, a strong pull, like an invisible rope, dragging me back. The sound of the defibrillator, the smell of ozone, the team shouting, sinus rhythm, "She's back." I opened my eyes in the CT room, white lights blinding me, a tube down my throat, my hands trembling. The resident, eyes full of tears, held my hand and said, "Doctor, you died and came back." I could only whisper one word, hoarse and almost inaudible, "Bible." They exchanged glances, thinking it was post-arrest delirium. But I knew. The miracle had just happened, and the faith I used to mock was now burning inside my chest like a live ember, ready to set fire to every corner of my existence. I woke up in the ICU with a tube down my throat and monitors beeping around me, as if I were just another patient in my own territory. The fluorescent light flickered weakly, and my body ached all over, like I'd been hit by a truck. The medical team, colleagues I had led for years, looked at me with a mix of relief and awe. "Dr. Ana Clara, you came back from nowhere," said the intensivist, his voice trembling slightly. I blinked slowly, trying to process it all. The tunnel, the light, that presence that called me by name. Jesus. Yes, it was him. I could feel it in my chest now. My first impulse wasn't to ask for test results or reports. It was to whisper, "Bible," even with my voice rough and the tube in the way. They thought it was confusion from the cardiac arrest, but I insisted, gesturing until a nurse brought me an old edition from the hospital chapel. Flipping through those yellowed pages in bed, for in my arm and bandages on my head, I felt a hunger that wasn't for food. I started with the New Testament, Matthew, and the words jumped out at me as if they'd been written just for me. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened. I cried quietly, tears soaking my pillow, because there it was, the deliverance I never even asked for. My faith was born right there, fragile as a sprout, but real. I, who used to mock prayers, now whispered thank yous softly, feeling God's presence in that sterile room. It was as if Jesus had left a piece of himself inside my heart, healing not just the stroke, but the emptiness I'd carried for years. The change began slowly, through verses I devoured between naps and medical visits. Doctors came and went, explaining the medical miracle. Your brain should have permanent damage, but the scans show complete recovery. I smiled inside, knowing it wasn't just science, it was divine. I began reflecting on my purpose, years spent saving bodies while ignoring souls. What if I really had died? I wondered, turning the pages of the gospel. The transformation was subtle but deep. I silently asked forgiveness from patients I'd mocked, promising to be different. One nurse noticed, "Doctor, you've changed." "Huh? Your eyes look softer." Yes, faith was softening me, like clay in the potter's hands. Jesus hadn't just brought me back. He planted a seed that was growing fast, making me question every choice I'd made. At night, alone in the room, with the beeping monitor as background music, I prayed for the first time. Lord, if this is real, show me more. And the memories came, faces of patients who survived against all odds, families who thanked God while I took the credit. Now I saw the miracle in them too, the deliverance I'd denied. My change of heart began in small acts, like smiling at residents instead of scolding them, or listening to someone's story of faith without interrupting. My new purpose was unfolding. To use my profession not just to heal physically, but to point towards something greater. God's presence was constant, like an invisible friend beside my bed, preparing me for what was next. Days went by, and while my body regained strength, my spirit was exploding with life. I read the entire book of John in one afternoon, each word feeling like balm on a wound. I am the way, the truth, and the life that echoed deep in my healing chest. I began writing verses in a notebook, reflecting on how to apply them to my daily life. Today, instead of mockery, show empathy. Faith was transforming me from the inside out, and I longed to share it, though I still hesitated. What if they laugh at me? I thought, but the miracle was undeniable, the deliverance tangible. Jesus had called me to heal souls, and I felt that the next step was to leave that hospital not just as a doctor, but as someone with a story to tell, ready to spread the light that saved me. Leaving the hospital after weeks with my medical discharge and a faint scar on my head, I felt like a stranger in my own world. The lab coat felt heavier on my shoulders, and the hospital, once my second home, now echoed with memories of my deliverance. Colleagues greeted me with hugs and curious smiles. "Dr. Ana Clara, it's a miracle you're back like this." I smiled, but inside, I was burning to tell everything. I started slowly sharing with the nurse who had brought me the Bible. "It was Jesus, you know? He called me back." She nodded, eyes shining, but others chuckled quietly, thinking it was post-stroke delirium. My young faith was facing its first test, the skepticism I used to feed myself. But God's presence gave me strength not to back down, turning every conversation into a seed planted. On my first shift back, I operated on a simple case, but I prayed softly before stepping into the OR. "Lord, guide my hands." The resident beside me raised an eyebrow. "Since when do you pray, doctor?" I told a bit of my story, the light, the voice that changed my life. He listened, skeptical, but I saw a spark of curiosity. My transformation showed in small things. Instead of sarcasm, I offered encouragement. Instead of arrogance, humility. Patients noticed, You seem more human today." Yes, the miracle didn't end in the hospital. It spread, revealing my new purpose to heal both bodies and souls. Jesus was teaching me to be a bridge, not a barrier, in this journey of transformation. A team meeting became the stage for my testimony by accident. We were discussing a terminal case, and I said, "Let's operate, but let's ask God too. I know what divine deliverance is." Silence, then nervous chuckles. A colleague, as atheist as I once was, shot back, "Science is enough, doctor. Don't mix things." It stung, but I replied calmly, "I used to mix only science and found emptiness. Now, with faith, I find hope." I left that room deep in thought, wondering what I'd do differently. Listen more, judge less. God's presence guided me, helping me plant seeds without forcing them. My faith grew with every rejection, like a muscle being strengthened. Over time, I started keeping a Bible in my locker, reading verses between surgeries. One day, a terminal patient asked for prayer, and instead of dodging it, I held her hand. "Jesus, bring her peace, and if it's your will, a miracle." She improved inexplicably days later. Another deliverance I celebrated. Colleagues whispered, "Has the doctor turned into a fanatic?" But I saw the fruit. A resident asked to talk about faith, admitting her own emptiness. The transformation was spreading. My purpose was expanding, to inspire those who doubted, just like I once did. Jesus was using my story to touch hearts hardened by hospital routines. Little by little, the mockery turned into dialogue. "Tell me more about that light," a surgeon asked over coffee. I told him, feeling the emotion rise, the tunnel, the voice, the call to heal souls. They listened. Some changed the subject. Others asked for more. My transformation sparked practical reflections. Start by praying for 1 minute a day, I'd suggest. The miracle was multiplying, and I longed for more, maybe beyond the hospital walls, in places where faith and medicine could walk hand in hand, bringing deliverance to those who needed it most. I was back to my routine, but the hospital now felt too small for what was burning inside me. Between surgeries, I read about medical missions in poor regions, places where scalpels and medicine were luxuries, and faith was often the only anesthesia. One quiet night on duty, I opened my laptop and saw an ad. Volunteers needed in Haiti, surgeons wanted. My heart raced. I remembered the voice in the light. "I want to heal your soul, and through you, others." That was it. The purpose I'd been searching for no longer fit in an air-conditioned operating room. It needed dusty roads, makeshift tents, and people who'd never heard of a CT scan. Transformation was pushing me outward, and faith was giving me courage. I booked a 3-week trip. My colleagues laughed. "Dr. Ana Clara, in the middle of nowhere? You'll come back crazy." I smiled. I already came back crazy for Jesus. I packed my worn-out Bible, a basic surgical kit, and a supply of prayers. On the flight, I reread the Acts of the Apostles, imagining Paul in foreign lands. "Lord, use my hands as you used his." I whispered. The deliverance from my stroke wasn't just for me, it was to make me a channel of miracles for others. My transformation had taken shape, from elite surgeon to field doctor, from mocker to messenger. God's presence traveled with me, stronger than any vaccine. I arrived in a post-earthquake village. Canvas tents, red dust, barefoot children. The clinic was a tent with a wooden table and a kerosene lamp. First patient, an 8-year-old boy with a brain abscess. No CT scan, no local neurosurgeon. I trembled. "Jesus, guide me," I prayed out loud. His mother, a devout Catholic, held my hand. "God sent you here." I operated right there, using a cell phone flashlight, local anesthesia, and a collective prayer. The boy woke up smiling. The tent erupted in hallelujahs. I cried, truly cried, mixing sweat and tears. It was the first miracle beyond my control, living proof that faith moves mountains, or at least drains abscesses. Days turned into weeks of improvised surgeries, childbirths, and fractures. I taught hygiene, prayed with mothers, and shared my story at night around the campfire. One atheist father, after seeing his daughter survive meningitis, asked me, "How do you explain it?" I replied, "I don't explain it. I live it. Jesus brought me back from death for this." He asked to borrow a Bible. The transformation spread. I witnessed daily deliverances, disappearing infections, fevers breaking, hearts opening. My purpose became clear. Missionary medicine wasn't charity. It was worship. Every stitch I made was a prayer sewn into flesh. Back in Brazil, the fire didn't go out. I started organizing monthly outreach missions in poor communities, bringing along residents who had converted on the journey. Let's go where science can't reach on its own. I would say, faith got me up at 4 a.m. to load boxes of medicine and Bibles. Jesus was rewriting my resume, from publications in international journals to miracle reports in the slums. God's presence was tangible in the smell of wet earth, in tears of gratitude, in the embrace of someone who'd never had a doctor before. And I knew this was only the beginning. The calling was growing, pointing toward lands even farther away where the scalpel and the gospel would walk hand in hand. After Haiti, there was no turning back. I reorganized everything, reduced my shifts at the private hospital, founded the NGO Hands That Heal, Hearts That Believe, and began traveling all over Brazil. Rio's favelas, Bahia's backlands, the Amazon's riverside communities, wherever there was physical and spiritual pain. There I was with my surgical kit and pocket Bible. With each trip, the miracle repeated itself. I'd remove a tumor using a sterilized kitchen knife, pray, and the patient would wake up speaking of light. Faith was no longer an accessory. It was fuel. Jesus turned my weekends into spiritual battlefields, and I loved every second of it. One night, deep in Maranhão, I treated a 12-year-old girl with advanced hydrocephalus. Without a drainage valve, I improvised with a catheter and syringe. The family prayed the rosary around the wooden table. When I finished, the girl opened her eyes and said, "I saw a man in white smiling at me." Her mother fainted from emotion. I recorded everything on my phone, not for marketing, but to document the deliverance. I posted it in the NGO group. Within 24 hours, the video had 100,000 views. Messages poured in. "I'm an atheist doctor. Explain this." I replied, "I don't explain. I invite you to come and see." The transformation went viral. My story moved from the clinic to the world. I started giving talks in churches and medical conferences. In crowded auditoriums, I told them about the stroke, the light, the voice that changed everything. I used to be the queen of mockery. Now, I'm a servant of the King. Tears flowed. Doctors hugged me afterward, confessing I feel the same emptiness. I created an online course, Medicine with Purpose, blending surgical technique with biblical principles. Residents signed up in droves. One of them, a former atheist like me, was baptized during a mission in Para after witnessing a blind man regain partial sight after cataract surgery. It was Jesus, he said. God's presence was multiplying in a network, like a virus of hope. As the NGO grew, I formed permanent teams, surgeons, nurses, pastors. We traveled in a converted van, carrying a generator, portable ultrasound, and boxes of Bibles. At every stop, besides performing surgeries, we held open-air services. Once, in Rondonia, 47 people accepted Jesus in a single night after seeing a grandmother with gangrene save her leg. I cried as I drove back, thinking, "Lord, this is bigger than me." The purpose was expanding. It was no longer just about healing bodies, but about raising disciples who would heal. The transformation of my life had become a movement, and the testimony kept echoing. A YouTube channel emerged, From Death to Mission, where I posted the miracles unedited, unfiltered. Millions of views, invitations for TV, radio, even abroad. But I turned down the big spotlights. I preferred the smell of earth and the tears of gratitude. Jesus taught me the miracle isn't for you, it's through you. And so I went on planning the next frontier. Africa, Asia, wherever there was pain. Faith had carried me from the operating table to dirt roads, and I knew the next chapter would be even bolder. Years passed, and what began as a light in a tunnel became a beacon for thousands. Today, the NGO has branches in 5 countries, with teams of Christian doctors working in war zones, slums, and remote villages. I travel constantly, speaking at universities, from neurosurgery to mission, how Jesus healed my soul and sent me to heal others. Atheist students approach afterward, eyes full of curiosity. Doctor, how can you prove this? I answer, live it. Come on a mission and witness deliverance with your own eyes. The faith that bloomed in that hospital now flourishes globally, turning skeptics into disciples. Jesus uses my story to show that a miracle isn't an isolated event. It's a chain of transformations. On a trip to Africa, I operated on an entire village affected by cerebral malaria. Without electricity, we used solar lamps and generators. A widow with a tumor woke up shouting, "I saw the Savior." The entire village converted that week, baptisms in the river, bonfires of praise. I recorded testimonies, posted them online, and donations poured in. My purpose keeps expanding, training local leaders, teaching surgery with prayer. The transformation doesn't stop with me. It echoes through every volunteer I inspire, every patient who feels God's presence in the touch of my hands. I often reflect on what I do differently. Before, I saw patients as cases. Now, as souls. Pray before you diagnose. I teach in training sessions. One former student, a surgeon in the Middle East, sent me a video. He saved a bomb child, praying in Arabic. "Your testimony brought me here," he said. "The miracle of my stroke multiplies. Mass deliverances, faith crossing borders." Jesus shows me that transformation is legacy, not trophies on shelves, but lives changed forever. Sometimes in roadside hotels, I reread my marked Bible, remembering the emptiness before the stroke. Lord, thank you for the slap that woke me up. I share this in live streams. If you doubt, ask yourself, what if there's more? Messages come in. Your story rekindled my faith. God's presence is constant, guiding routes, protecting in danger. My everyday life is living proof. From a mocking atheist to an ambassador of miracles, spreading deliverance wherever I go. And the fire keeps growing. I plan to expand into Asia, training female doctors in male-dominated regions. Jesus heals souls, and we heal bodies, will be our motto. Every mission reinforces it. The purpose is infinite, and faith contagious. Who knows what comes next? More conversions, more healings, more stories pointing to heaven.